Welcome to Dream, Declare, Deliver with Chris Gorell and Candace Ogren. Join us each week as we explore how to live a life by design and turn inspiration into realization.
Well, good morning and hello. Happy holidays and greetings, whatever time zone you happen to be in. It's Chris and Candace again, and we are here to talk about how to dream, declare, and deliver to live the life that you want by design, by your design. And so we thought, given that we're recording this on the day after Christmas, that we might just talk a little bit about the holidays and how those occur to different people, and then move into a couple themes that are really present to us on this kind of special day after. So I think the first thing, and Candace, you mentioned this before, that, sometimes for some people, the holidays are tough. They remind us of, past events that may have not been so great or whatever, or we have family dynamics that are just stressful. And for many people, the holidays are a time of gathering and a time of rejoicing and family and just really being thankful. So we wanted to start just by talking a little bit about the various ranges of experiences that we have around the holidays.
Yeah. And I was just telling Chris that, I'm living my life by design right now. And my husband and I bought a house a year and a half ago that is a bed and breakfast. Essentially, we can sleep 20 people at our house, which is pretty amazing. And on Cape Cod, it's beautiful, right in the main downtown of our community. And so our family loves to come here. And one of my visions when I found this house and told my husband that I wanted to buy it, I told him, I said, I imagine us hosting family here for Christmas. Like, that's what I imagine. That's what this house says to me that it wants. And, so, my husband's parents are divorced, and we actually host Christmas twice. So we get twice the fun. And so we have his entire family down 2 different times in the month of December. And this weekend they've been down for 3 days, and we have 8 people here, and it's great. And while all that's happening, and while I'm living the vision and seeing, my son playing with his cousins and just great joy, I lost a son 2 years ago, a week from today. And I, 2 years ago was in the emergency room 8 times in 6 weeks in triage, because we were, touch and go and with our son being delivered very, very early. And so this is also a time of great pain for me. It was interesting. Last night, we're hosting Christmas dinner, and we have, even my brother-in-law brought his mother, we had this extended family for Christmas, and it was beautiful. And then I just got overwhelmed. I just got smacked in the face with grief. And I'm, sitting in the kitchen, and everyone's screaming and, wanting to do a show and all these things. And I just couldn't. In that moment, I just had to cry and wash my dishes. And so you can feel both. You can feel joy and pain at the same time. And that's really what the topic of today's conversation is, in a way. What we want to talk about is scarcity and abundance. And the good news is this: you can be both scarce and abundant at the same time, and you get to choose which path you want to take. And in that moment, I was feeling pretty scarce. I was missing August, my son, and also feeling great joy. And so that was my experience last night, Chris. Tell me about your holiday.
Well, we always at Christmas and Thanksgiving host a couple of friends who have no family. All their living relatives are deceased, and so we always have them over. They're kind of our extended family during the holidays. And so we had our little gathering of, I think we had 10 folks last night around the table, including my son, who was back, and our German exchange student. And so we started off with toasting each other and just first of all, congratulating our German exchange student, who was selected. He was, one of only 3 people in this entire program that was selected to go to DC to work in Congress for the next 3 months. And so we were so proud of him and sending him off, and at the same time welcoming other people who had no family and for whom we are family. And so we were toasting the family. And so it was a coming and a going at the same time, and I think, the thing that I'm aware of is that a lot of times we seem to think that it's a toggle switch. We're one or the other.
The other.
And And what Candace and I always talk about and have written so many places into the book Typhoon Honey is that it's a both and world. You know, it's not black and white dualistic, either or. You either get to be abundant or you're, falling into scarcity. And, as Candace just said, it's just, it's the both and, you get to feel all of the feelings. So what, let's talk a little bit about scarcity and abundance, So the human brain, I'm going to get psychology on you here for a second, but the human brain.
Chris is the science and I'm the art of this conversation.
Chris pretends to be a psychologist at times. And the way our brain is set up is for our survival. I mean, it's the one thing that, its job is, if there's anything the brain does, it makes sense out of the world, but it makes sense in terms of what's going to help you survive. And so, when you're thinking of survival, when your brain is trying to process things from a survival instinct, it's looking at limited resources, limited time, limited whatever, and I'm just little. I got to protect myself. And so that's where the scarcity mindset really comes from. It's a natural thing that we live with, that we grew up with and grew into or evolved with. And so it's not like wrong, to have those feelings every once in a while of not enough. I think we all have a sense of, like, somewhere in our childhood, we got this sense that we were little and small and everything else was much bigger than us. So we learned that we're not big enough, we're not strong enough or whatever. And so, between the survival instinct and that, that early childhood memory of not enough or not big enough or whatever, we all have that somewhere in us, and at the same time, just look around, just look around you and see everything. You could be living in a shelter, and look around and still appreciate the abundance of things that are there. So go ahead.
I think that's an important point. Abundant mindset. So when people talk about, I want to be in abundance, the first suggestion that I make to them or invitation I make to them is the first step is to decide I am in abundance, mm-hmm. and to look around at what you have, where you are, and be grateful. Andrew and I, when we got married, we traveled the world for 6 months. We got married in Italy and traveled the world for 6 months. And one of the things that we did is we trekked the Himalayas. And we had a trekking guide, Kumar, who his family had lost everything, their home. They had lost all their belongings in the earthquake in Nepal. And they were living in the government had given them a piece of sheet metal that they bent in half and turned into a tent. And that's what they were living under with their animals. And he was telling us about this. And what's amazing is that he was so abundant. Like he was happy. He was saying, my family is healthy. We have so many things, we have so many blessings. And what's amazing, my husband and I raised the money to build him a new house while we were on this trek. And to this day, Kumar is a very good friend of ours, but he didn't need the house to be abundant. He didn't need the things. And so I think there's a reframing of what abundance means. Abundance doesn't mean that you have things. Abundance means that you identify your life in gratitude.
Right. And I think that's where it starts, for me is, to start my day each day and to end my day each day, bookending it with gratitude. When I wake up and say, man, it's such a beautiful day, I get to live another day. I get to be with this wonderful, powerful woman that I love, and we now have celebrated. We're coming up in just a few days on our 32nd. No, our 31st, sorry. Our 31st anniversary. I'm just advancing time. Yeah, it was abundance, But I'm so grateful, for what I have. And one of the principles I think it's a universal principle, is you can't receive more if you're not grateful for what you already have. So the first part of an abundant mindset is really being grateful. Just count your blessings. And if you can't find anything, be thankful that you're breathing, that you have air to breathe, and it's not noxious and poisonous. There are places in this world that you and I have both been to. Kathmandu, which is probably one of the most polluted cities. The air quality is just awful there because it sits in a valley, and all of the smoke and gases from everything that's done there are trapped in that valley often, and so the air is just really hard to breathe. Thick, really. So be grateful that you have air to breathe. Be grateful that your heart. One time I had to get a heart test, a stress test, and part of it was an echocardiogram, and I asked if I could watch the monitor, and if you've never seen the syncopated dance that your heart does, you go do it just for the experience of it, because it's not lubbed up like what we feel the pulse being. It's this squirmy thing that's all coordinated. There are 4 parts. It just amazed me to watch how it did that. I go it's been doing that since before I was born, and it will do it until the day I take my last breath, and it doesn't miss a beat. Oh, every once in a while it skips a little, but how grateful can you be for just having a heartbeat?
And some of you might be listening and saying, okay, well, that's great, Chris and Candace. I'm glad you guys are so grateful to be alive and that you're counting your blessings, and you both have lovely marriages and families and all kinds of people to celebrate your holidays with, but that's not me. And if that's you, I think we might want to just start on the scarcity side, honestly. Because I definitely was feeling scarce yesterday too. I was feeling exhausted. We literally gave our bedroom to my sister-in-law. And so we were sleeping on this really uncomfortable sleeper sofa, and I didn't have any privacy. I couldn't take a nap. I was definitely feeling scarce. In the midst of all my abundance, I was feeling quite scarce. And when I found out my family was not leaving today, but continuing to stay through today while I had a work day, I was like, what? And I was feeling very scarce. So, first of all, if you are having a tough time, as many do, through the holidays. And even in the midst of my joy, I had some tough times, and I'll have more tough times over the next weeks. I know it. Chris, what do you do? What do you do when you're in those moments of either scarcity, pain, emptiness? Where do you go?
The first thing that I've learned to do, and this is the hardest thing that I had to learn as an adult, is to allow myself to feel that. Because what I've learned over time is that when you suppress one emotion, one feeling, you actually are suppressing the whole feeling array. You can't, it's a package deal. I always say, it's like, if you push down on those emotions, all of them get suppressed. And so the first thing is just to allow the fact in, allow it in. It's like, oh, I'm feeling really scarce right now. I'm feeling really thin. I'm like my skin is paper thin, and everything, is like sandpaper against it hurts, and so I allow myself to feel that. Then the second thing I do is I ask myself, how long do I need to experience that? Because, I need to let myself have that emotion, because without allowing that, I can't allow the other emotions like joy and gratitude and things like that. So those are the first 2 things. What do you do?
Well, I guess there's an important thing that you just mentioned here. And I think a lot of us, I'll just speak for myself right now. Yeah. When I am feeling in the pits, when I'm in my in my, at my worst, I want to get out of it. And the more I want to get out of it, the more stuck I feel in it.
Yeah.
And like, I'm embarrassed. Like even yesterday, I was washing dishes, crying, and I was embarrassed. Like the whole family's here. Like, why am I crying while I'm washing dishes? And I was like beating myself up over it, which made it worse. Like, and I just kept get heavier and heavier and heavier. And I think the first thing you're saying is like, okay, just allow it. Like, okay, I'm going to cry right now. And if people see me, I'm going to say, hey, I'm crying. And I'm not exactly sure why, but I'm crying and I'm going to let it happen.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to feel it. So I think a lot of times when I was a kid, I was told, don't cry, not in public, don't make a scene. And I was kind of coached and told not to allow these emotions through. And I think that's really important, is that you allow them. The second thing is, and this is something that Andrew and I do a lot, is we'll say, I'm in scarcity right now. We'll identify it. Like, I'm feeling really scarce. I haven't had much sleep. I'm in back pain. I know that I'm in an emotionally, tense time for myself. I haven't had anything to eat. Like we like identify like what's causing me to feel so scarce right now. So at least the other person's aware, like if I'm going to be in my emotions, I at least want the people I love to know why I'm in my emotions.
That's sweet. And the other side of the same coin is sometimes when I get in that depleted state or feeling just, hammered down by my world, I'll snap. I'll say something snarky to Sarah, and we have the permission with each other to call out that, like, woo, what's up with you today? And that's cause for me to stop and say, yeah, you know what? I'm really feeling in scarcity. I'm really feeling depleted right now. And I don't need to take it out on you. It's just, I'm feeling that. And I apologize and say, like, let me do that over again. Here's what I'm feeling and this is what's going on, and really get a chance to own that. But it's great to have a partner that allows you that space and calls you out on it.
If you don't have a partner, maybe you might have kids. And what I would also say is that the surest fire way for me to know if I'm in scarcity is to look at my 3-year-old. He will tell me. And like if he's acting out, if Ivor's acting out, I know it's because I'm in a tough spot. But the third
pets
thing
too, I'm sorry to interrupt, but pets, people who are alone and have a pet, pets are so sensitive to those ups and downs and the scarcity and abundance, and they'll just they'll cuddle up next to you because they know that's what you need.
And final thing I'll say on this is, if you're not sure, if you're like, I don't know if I'm in scarcity or abundance right now, look at the 5 people around you that are the closest to you, because we are all mirrors for each other. So whether it's your kids, your animals, your family members, your friends, if the people around you are in joy and abundance, then likely, even if you're not feeling it right now, you can probably find your way back to it. But if you're finding that everyone around you is stressed, that there's just like you're experiencing stress, it's likely that you're emanating it, because we're all perfect mirrors for each other. And so the final thing I'll say, and this is point 3 that you mentioned, is identify how long you need to be in that space. And this might sound silly, because you might be like, what does that even mean? I'm going to be in this space until I'm not. No, actually, you're not. You actually do have control over this. And Andrew and I call it poor baby. How many poor babies? How many poor babies do you need, Candace? And then he'll say, oh, poor baby, I am so sorry. And he'll commiserate with me, and I'll say, I need an hour. And he'll say, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. And so like he truncates my poor baby. But what that does is it helps me to understand I don't have to be in this all day. Yeah. Like when I was washing the dishes last night, crying about my lost son, I didn't have to actually be in that for a week. I got to be in that for the 15 minutes I was washing the dishes. And then I got to shift back into joy again with my family. And allowing yourself to say, how much time do I need? Talking about it with somebody else and letting them reflect back to you. We call this accountability partners, but finding yourself an accountability partner to actually hold you to it. Okay, yeah. I'm going to give you until tomorrow morning, but then you're going to shift.
Yeah, a real quick story about that is when the pandemic first hit us, I was coming into a very abundant year. I had on the books prepared through Q2 and Q3 of 2019. Was that the first year? I forget which.
Who's counting?
Anyway, the first year of the pandemic, I had a really abundant pipeline. And in a matter of, I think, a week, it entirely vaporized. And I was looking at zeros, for my next 2 or 3 quarters. I had nothing for Q4 yet, but, I was going to coast through the year and really have a, pretty sizable bankroll by the end of the year. And it just vaporized. And so I got into the scarcity for a chunk of time. I think it was, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, like after I realized that, I was just like, oh, poor me, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then I needed to do something to shift. To shift it. So, and this might not work for you, but this is what I did. I went to the bank and I pulled out $100 in $20 bills. And then I went to the grocery store. There were only 5 people working. There were 2 stockers. There was 1 person on cashier or 2 people on cashier, and there was 1 person in the office. And I went around to each of them and I gave them a $20 bill and said, thank you for working today. I know it's a scary place to be. And I gave. And, the thing that's true in my brain, is that you can't be in scarcity and abundance too often at the same time. And so what that did was you can't really give away stuff if you don't feel abundant. So I forced myself to feel abundant by giving away, what was feeling scarce at that time, which was I saw zeros in my pipeline again. And by the time I left the grocery store, I just was happy again. I felt okay again. I felt my feet were on the ground again, and I knew we could do it. I knew we could make it. So you find things.
But just on that topic, Chris, I think you may be listening to this saying, well, that'd be nice. I wish I was rich like Chris and had $100 that I could.
I didn't feel very rich.
I know. But where I would go with that is that giving it away doesn't have to be monetary or even tangible. Right. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we teach often in our trainings and when we're coaching is just go out and give it away. Give away your hugs, give away your gratitude, give away acknowledgement to strangers, to people you love. Pick up the phone and call someone and spend 15 minutes acknowledging them. That you will find magic in giving it away. And we always have our gratitude. 100% of the time, even when we are in our darkest moments, we can find someone to be grateful for, something in life to be grateful for. Start there and give that away.
That's so true. Just in your deepest, darkest place, sit there and say, well, what am I grateful for? And your brain's going to say nothing. And you say, yeah, but what am I grateful for? And because you have control, you have conscious control and choice at any moment. And your brain, in its scarcity protection mode, may say, there's nothing out here to be grateful for. Look at where I'm at. I'm sitting on the floor, crying in my own stuff. I'm like the biblical Job sitting on his dung heap, picking his sores. It's like, I'm terrible, but keep asking. So yeah, but what am I grateful for? And find something, and then find another thing. And if you can only find 2 things, start there, but it's doing something to flip that toggle switch into, abundance. And I know we said, at the beginning that it's not a toggle switch, you actually can find both of them at the same time. You can feel your feelings and then become grateful and then become abundant even in the reality knowledge of you don't have.
Well, one other thing that's a tool that I think might be useful right now is, and this is something Chris and I talk about a lot, which is breakdown to breakthrough. And like, you can be grateful for the breakdown. And like, okay, I'm in it right now. I am in it. And okay, I'm feeling stuck. The first thing I often do is when I'm in it, I tell somebody I'm in it. And I mentioned this on the last episode, but I talk about my head is a bad neighborhood, and like there's like gang fights going on and car fires and all of that and graffiti. I love graffiti, but when you're in it, it is the most dangerous place you can stay is inside your own head. And you know, there is beauty in the breakdown. I think there's a song called that. There's beauty in the breakdown. And the reason for that is that breakdown means you are on the precipice of whatever is your next greatness. If you can just allow yourself to share what you're feeling, and that vulnerability and sharing whatever your breakdown is with anyone, someone, allows you to open yourself up to whatever is your next breakthrough.
Yeah, that's so true. You know, and breakdowns are really what's happening in a breakdown is you're coming face to face with something that's holding you in place. And what's available in that moment, when you acknowledge it, when you name it and say, okay, this is what's happening, you know, how is this something that's holding me in place, and what do I get to do to get to the other side of that? You know, the subtitle to Typhoon Honey is "The Only Way Out is Through." The only way out of a real breakdown is to go through it and really come out on the other side. And on the other side, you look back on it and say, okay, so what that was that was a really old story from my past. I grew up in scarcity. I grew up in Appalachia. Me personally, I did. And so there's a lot of old stories floating around, old tapes running in my head that say, you know, there's never going to be enough. And so what happens when I'm able to embrace that and then step through it by doing something like gratitude, like abundance, or giving, you know, doing a hug campaign. You know, one time I just wrote out a whole bunch of, you know, just tell somebody else you love them, and, you know, printed out a whole bunch of them, cut them apart, and went around the parking lot and put them under about 150 windshield wipers, so that when people came out from work, they would see some message of gratitude. And again, just giving like that, a simple act, you know, can break you through to the other side, and then you can look back on it and say, ooh, that's what was happening.
And I think I'd like to close, Chris, with one fun exercise that we have in our book, and this is change your words, change your world. And so you know, we're talking about all these things that you can do outward. Go give it out to strangers. Okay, what if you aren't there yet? What if you're not in a place where you can give it out to strangers? You start by giving it to yourself. And one of my favorite things that we do often is we find something that you're stuck in, just something that you're stuck about. And you know, I've got 10 people here at my house right now, and they were screaming right before we did this taping. And I told my husband, I was like, please get them out of the house. Like we have a podcast to record. And so I'm hearing my son screaming. He has no shoes on as it's 15 degrees outside. My husband's carrying him out, kicking literally. You know, in that moment, the one thing I can do is say, wow, in this moment, I could be in my story could be in scarcity, like about how awful this is, how stressed out I am, how all the people in my house, or I could say, wow, that is amazing. I have a family who is willing to pack themselves up, put themselves in a car, go stand outside for an hour and 15 minutes I have a husband who is willing to take a screaming toddler with no shoes on out of the house because they love me. And just switch we call it flipping the script, or switching the situation, changing your words, changing your world. If you put yourself in a victim story, that's where you'll stay. But if you can just change the exact same facts to be something that you're grateful for, something that you're blessed to be in, it will change your entire mindset around that situation. Do you have any examples of that, Chris?
Well, yeah, I mean, so when I get in that oppressed state, you know, everything occurs to me like I have to do this and I have to do that. And so the first step is, you know, just saying that, you know what, it's a choice and I get to do it. So changing it from have to get to. And it sounds silly as a simple exercise, but just shifting that one word from have to get to, puts you in a state of gratitude. You know, I have to pay my bills. You know what? I get to pay my bills because I have utilities. I have a house. I have a mortgage, you know, and I have those things that you know, it's a privilege. There are so many people who don't. So it's a privilege to do that. I get to do it.
And with that, today we wish you a very happy holiday. We know that we are all going into a new year. This is an exciting time of change, an exciting time of opportunity. And it's also not a time for you to allow yourself to feel what you're feeling and give yourself the time that you need to shift, but give yourself a deadline to shift. So with that, we thank you so much for joining us today on Dream, Declare, Deliver. We're so excited to be doing this together, blessed to be doing it together. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.